I know the last time we spoke, you mentioned you gave a great tip on what you do when it comes to planning out your flip. And you want to touch on that? I feel like we can't leave that out.
Yeah.
That was an awesome tip that I'm never gonna forget. Welcome to Building Wealth Through Real Estate. If you invest or desire to invest in real estate, then this show is exactly what you need. And here's why. We all know that the number one thing that you should be doing as an investor is networking. Your network equals your net worth. But how can you use this to your advantage? Well, firstly, take notes. Listen to what the guests have to say. If you're a new investor, you can learn from the mistakes that they've made, the experiences that they've gone through, and learn how they think. If you're an experienced investor, you could see strategies that they may be implementing that you haven't thought of using yourself. Now, secondly, you may have questions, and if you do, great. Put them in the comment section down below, and this way we can be sure to get those questions answered for you. And thirdly, there's a ton of information out there, but I found that most of it is relevant to the US, and it's hard to try and take out and extract and see what's relevant to your area. So all of the guests that I'll be interviewing are Canadian investors. So if you invest in Canada, if you're interested in investing in Canada, then this show is exactly what you need. Joining us today is Mr. Dustin Racine. Dustin, could you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, how you got started in real estate, and your journey to this point?
You bet. Yeah. So I'm a real estate agent with eXp Realty. I started off as a general contractor, had a company, still do, called Built with Pride Construction. And our niche market was legal basement suites. And then from there, started flipping homes and and then got into the real estate game.
Awesome. So what strategy are you currently pursuing?
We're just doing flips currently. It's just fix and flips, buy at the right price, find discounted properties in sought after neighborhoods, and look for that high ARV. And just flipping.
Yeah, man. I saw, I think it was yesterday, you posted some
Mm-hmm.
updated pictures with your latest flip, and oh man, you did an awesome job. Awesome job.
Thanks,
I love the
appreciate it.
finishes. I love the quality. That kitchen,
Thanks,
stunning. I love it, man. Yeah.
thanks. Yeah. We're trying to do a little bit higher end, right? It doesn't cost a lot more, but little things, Um, we did the toe kick lighting and the under cabinet lighting in the kitchen
I saw
and the
that. I
vanities,
love that.
that makes a huge difference, right? For the extra 600-700 bucks, I think it's money well spent.
Absolutely. Now, when it comes to flips, I know we've spoken about this. Tracking your
Mm-hmm.
expenses with regards to your flip projects is a must. Do you have any tips for people out there when it comes to tracking the expenses?
Yeah, I do. Routine is key. So what I like to do is I open up a spreadsheet as soon as the job starts, and make a habit of sitting down every weekend or evening whenever you have time, and periodically going over your receipts and your expenses. Pull up your bank statements on your online banking and enter everything, and ensure that it's not just the construction related costs, but in addition, it's all those additional costs that you forget to account for, whether it's utilities, property taxes, maintenance, lawn maintenance and snow removal, all that sort of stuff. Your private lender fees, legal fees, realtor fees, all that. And it's not even so much to pinpoint the cost on that particular project, although that's obviously important as well. But then you'll have a gauge, right, for the next one. So if you get a similar property, your estimate on what it's going to cost you is going to be that much more accurate because you kept such a good log of expenses on the previous job. So helps you going forward.
100%. And I think that's something that a lot of new investors start with is those miscellaneous expenses, trying to pinpoint them. So absolutely, I love that. That's great advice is make sure you're keeping on top of it. I know you do it regularly, like weekly, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
And that way it doesn't build up and become too much of a task. And you can sort of stay on track and make sure you're keeping yourself in check. But I love that because that just helps you, like you say, run the numbers for your future deals, be that more accurate when it comes to running your numbers. And that just helps you with your confidence in putting in offers, in knowing that you can make this work. So I love
Yeah.
that. I think it's an important part of flipping. Now, speaking of flipping, flipping's a great way to make
Mhm.
active income and build up your power team, right? Because you're keeping them busy. But unfortunately, it
Mhm.
doesn't really build up that long term wealth. Um, what do
Exactly.
you do to ensure that you're not only increasing your income but also that long term wealth?
Yeah. So what I do, it's a little bit maybe out of the ordinary because we're on a real estate show. But what I like to do is I buy index funds. So when I do a flip, I'll take my profits and typically I'll put half of my profits back in the corporation for the next flip. And I'm also essentially paying myself a wage. And then the other half, yeah, I put in my Quest Trade account, my tax-free savings account, and buy index funds for long-term buy and hold. But you're 100% right. I'm glad you brought that up because I think it is important to have a long-term game because that's at the end of the day, that's how really you build net worth. Flipping's good, brings in income. There's also risk though, right? I've made 90K on a flip. I've lost 30K on a flip. So yeah, you gotta do your due diligence and always have the long term game in mind and have a plan, because that's what it's about, right? We want to set our kids up for success, reduce our stress, free up our time. That's what it's about at the end of the day. So investing at the end of the day comes down to not living beyond your means. There's a lot of people who look rich and have nice things and they're flat out broke. So, investing essentials. Don't live beyond your means. Take your money and invest it. And that the old Robert Kiyosaki, right? Money's like it's almost like seeds. You're supposed to plant it and make more. So that's the name of the game. Whether there's no one size fits all. Whether there's all sorts of different investment vehicles, all sorts of different strategies within real estate. So I think what's great about platforms like what you have and the Facebook groups and the Reddits and the YouTube videos is you can extrapolate all this information from different sources and then just decide what works best for you and your plan, and everyone's going to be different. um and then the other thing, there's you can pivot too, right? I know a lot of people preach get really good at one thing and repeat it, which there's truth to that, but there's also a lot of things out of your control, like the market. There's a lot of people made a lot of money flipping when the market was going up, and then you get caught in a down market with interest rates going up, and you take a bit of a hit. So there's other strategies you can implement. I'm a big proponent of legal suites. I find they're in high demand, especially when things slow down. Like there's always investors looking for legal suites, and no matter what the market's doing. I find when we're in a climate like we are now, you also have homeowners come out of the woodwork because they're looking for ways to supplement their income and reduce their living expenses. So a lot of homeowners are out there looking for legal suites now as well. Rent out the basement and cover at least half your mortgage easy, or vice versa. If just a young couple, no kids, live in the basement, rent out upstairs, and you probably cover 2/3 of your mortgage. So yeah, I'm a big proponent of that, and do it when you're young. If you're just starting out, I think that's a great way to give yourself a head start. Because it's not gonna be easy once you got kids. I'm pretty sure your partner's not gonna say, "Oh yeah, no problem, we'll have a renter live with us." So yeah, do it while you can, and you're just making short term sacrifices for long term gain at the end of the day.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Now, you said, I love what you said. You split your money up as that income comes in, and you put some aside so that you can invest. You pay yourself a wage, and you keep some to sort of reinvest into the next flip. I love that because like you say, it's so easy for that income creep, right? You start earning more, you start spending more. Like, hey, let's upgrade the car, let's upgrade the house. It's so easy to upgrade those expenses and those liabilities. So that just keeps you in check, is if you're proactive about it. Not like, let's get all this money coming in. Oh, how am I going to spend this money? No, you have a game plan. I'm going to split this money up. I'm going to invest so much. I'm going to keep some to reinvest that into flipping. And then, yes, I'll take some money out of this. I like that. If you're proactive about it, I think it just serves you better. And you're absolutely right. There are so many ways to go about investing. It doesn't necessarily have to be within real estate to invest for the long term. There's multiple different ways to go about it, and there's no wrong or right way. It's more just choosing the way that best fits you. So, yeah, there's a lot of information out there. Like you said, there's podcasts, there's forums, there's plenty of sources, and just sort of trying to find what fits best with you and have that game plan, have that strategy, so that you're proactive. You're not only increasing your income, but you're building that long-term wealth. I love that strategy.
Exactly.
And then speaking on what you said about the suites, um, I
Mm-hmm.
like that. And I mean, especially in our market in Edmonton, right? That's sort of a popular thing is suited homes. And
Mm-hmm.
you're absolutely right. It's not only investors that are suiting homes so that they can increase that cash flow. There's homeowners that are like, hey, I'll rather buy a bigger home, a nicer home, and supplement some of that expense by suiting it out or buying a suited home and renting it out so that I can live maybe in a nicer area, or I can live in a better property and have someone pay off that help me pay off the mortgage at least. So I
Exactly.
like that strategy, and I know you incorporate that into your flipping is the suited aspect, which I know some flippers don't. They just go for the standard sort of a single
Mm-hmm.
family 1 unit home. But yeah, we can dive into that a little more. I know you touched on as well, you've made up to 90K on the flip and you've lost like 30K
Mm-hmm.
on the flip as well. I like that. I
Yep.
like the fact that you're not only highlighting your wins, but you're highlighting your losses as well, just to be sort of open to people out there. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. You need to make sure you're doing your due diligence. And even if you do, sometimes there are those losses that you take, though. So, looking back at your journey this far, what mistakes
Mm-hmm.
stand out the most to you? And what would you have done differently knowing what you now know?
Yeah, hindsight. Hindsight's a beautiful thing, eh?
Yeah.
Well, I got like many people. I got caught in the down market with these crazy interest rate hikes. Um, so the one I was talking about where we just lost 30K, for those who know the Edmonton area, it was in Fulton Place, which is kind of Capilano area, just south side of the river there. So what had happened was I thought I was being proactive and smart. So this was a previous rental property. They had tenants in there, and this was in back in February. We got this place when the market was hot, and like a lot of people, I thought the market would keep going up. So time's my friend, right? My ally. So they had tenants in there, had to give them 90 days. And I'm like, oh, this is great. We're going to be building equity and we don't even have the keys yet. So, of course, we get the keys. What that been March? It would have been May, and then another three months to do their reno, and then sitting on the market for a month. So by the time that's all said and done, we're looking at 7 months, start to finish, and things changed as everybody knows. So in hindsight, actually, what I would have done, I wouldn't even done the reno. I would have got the keys after the because we got it at a good price. Once it was vacant, and I got the keys. In hindsight, I should have threw it right back on the market and you know listed it, make my commission, maybe make 15-20K profit, and don't have to do a thing. But yeah, live and learn, right? I always say it's only a mistake if you don't learn from it. If you're learning, then it's a lesson. You're better off for it, and you just keep going onward and upward.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is everyone's trying to, time the market, and it's you just
Mm-hmm.
don't know, I mean, you can sort of predict and you can speculate, and we all know that it's
Mm-hmm.
it's cyclical and that it goes up and that it goes down, but no one knows when that wave is about to crash, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I get that though. I mean, in hindsight, you would definitely just that makes sense. Why not just take that profit without having to put any effort in, without having to go through all the work of renovating it. Now, I know a lot of investors seem to be gravitating towards fix and flips. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and like each strategy, there's, like you say, there's risks associated. What
Mm-hmm.
defensive tactics can you sort of apply to your flipping business to protect yourself as much as possible?
Yeah, I think it's highly important to run the numbers first and foremost. Know your area, know your after repair value, and then having an exit strategy, a plan B too, and that's where those suites can come in. Um, if the market takes a dip or you're not going to sell it for what you had hoped, you can just wait it out. If it's cash flowing, wait the market out. Maybe you want to wait till spring market, whatever the case may be. But yeah, you got a plan B built in with a legal suite. So I think that's right now in this climate. That's the way to go. I think that's what I recommend. I've done both. I've done just single family flips. Done legal suites. It also depends on the area because there are some highly sought after areas where your buy-in cost is obviously higher. And because of that, they don't cash flow, right? So Millwoods, Northeast Edmonton, Northwest Edmonton. That's good grounds for doing flips, or sorry, for doing suites. doing burrs. Whereas if you go in the maybe the more sought after areas that have a larger pool of owners and not renters, like the Otwells, Fulton Place, Terrace Heights, Holyrood, all those sorts of areas. They're more, and even the like if you want to get into the park views or Rio Terrace, the really high end neighborhoods. That's more, I'd say, geared towards just regular flips. It's weird because if you do a suite in, let's say, I don't know, Delwood, right, Northeast Edmonton, you're going to see a pretty large variation. If you did the same house and you did just a regular flip versus a legal suite, you're going to see a large variation in the cost difference, right? Because on a regular flip, you might be capped at, I don't know, let's say 400. It's probably your cap. If you're doing a legal suite, you're bumping 450, 460, right? If you go do that same job in Fulton Place, your legal suite might only be worth 20K more than your regular flip, right? So you gotta lean on your realtor too, and pull comps, do your due diligence, run your numbers. I'd say that's the most important thing, right? It's like a game of chess. You're always trying to stay two steps ahead. That's what real estate's awesome because all the little intricacies, the tricks, and yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. It's fun though. It's kind of a bit of a puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you highlighted that is, I mean, the cost is going to stay the same no matter what, within your marketplace, but trying to narrow down the neighborhoods where you're going to get that ROI, where you're going to get back what
Mhm.
you spent and maybe even more for sweetening the property, is the key. I love that. And
Mhm.
absolutely, you have to rely on your realtor for this. Making sure that there are comps to sort of justify that it makes sense to sweet the property in the area. Or else you sort of
Mhm.
just you're not going to get that money back. You're going to spend that money, but you're just not going to get it back, and it's just going to eat away into your profit. So I absolutely love that. A way to
Mhm.
mitigate the risk is to sweet a property, which I love because I mean I've had a lot of flippers on my channel, but with
Mhm.
each different person that I bring on, there's that unique perspective. So it never gets stale, it never gets old. Everyone has their own sort of strategy and their own tactics and tips that they use. So I love this. I feel like this is a unique perspective is, hey, consider sweetening a property if you're flipping it, because not only
Mhm.
if it's in the right area can it help add to the after repair value, but it can also help protect you if you maybe can't sell. Maybe the market takes a dip and you need to switch it to a rental property, or just to increase your sort of market share to who you marketing to, because now it's not just homeowners that you can market to like a regular um, finished turnkey flip. It can now be actually like a turnkey rental for investors who don't want to get into a property, have to renovate, do repairs, that sort of thing. They just want to buy it. They're more active. They're
Mhm.
earning a higher income with whatever it is that they're doing. So they're less of an active investor. They're more active at their job. They just want to buy a rental property that's not going to give them issues, that's already done, and they can put tenants in there and maybe outsource the managing and leave it be. I love that. It increases your market share, so it definitely decreases your risks. What are some other risks involved, or what are some risks involved with flipping that investors should be aware of?
I would say two largest risks. I guess first and foremost is going over on your construction budget, which it's easy to do, right? If you're not doing your due diligence or you don't have a bit of a buffer, I always like to put on a 10 to 15% contingency. I do think there are some get in over their head, right? If you don't have construction experience, the problem is you're relying on so many other people, right? Like I've had a general contracting company, I've built out my team, and like anything, you're gonna get the odd dud. So as you go, you're weeding out the weak links and you're building your kind of the dream team, right? If you're new to construction and you're just reaching out to random people, you're taking on a lot of risk. And everyone's heard the horror stories about the contractor that gives you a quote, gets in there, and then it's 20% more, and now you're losing your shirt. Um, I think communication and clarity is key. So, what I always recommend is if you are hiring a contractor, if you have no experience, you want to hire a contractor to oversee all of it. Um, when you rate on a property, have your realtor just put in a little clause in there, due diligence period. You can put something on the terms like need let's say before removing conditions, we need access to the property up to 5 times, something like that. And that way, if you can't get 3 contractors in on the same day, you've got that flexibility. So get the contractors in there, get your quotes. And the other thing I would recommend is make sure you have a spec sheet itemizing and detailing everything, because there's so many assumptions made on each side. Like somebody, just for an example, you could say tile backsplash, $750. Okay, well, who's supplying the tile? What about grout? Who's supplying the edging? Electrical, or are they supplying their own fixtures? Are you supplying them? Plumbing? Just itemize everything, and then get them to sign off on it. You sign off on it, and then there's no gray area. You're all on the same page. So I highly recommend that. For people who don't have construction experience, maybe you've had issues with contractors in the past. I mean, turnkey too is. I feel turnkey safer. Real estate, it's like flipping. There's more risk, but there's also a potential for more profit. It's almost like a Bitcoin, right? If you got in at the right time, you made a fortune. Got in at the wrong time, you lost your shirt. So, whereas turnkey is more conservative. Turnkey is like an index fund, right? It's you know your numbers, you know if you're gonna cash flow, and you're kind of holding out long term, right? So it's I don't know. I like to take real estate and kind of equate it to the stock market, right? Same idea.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. I love that. I love the tip that you gave about the about contractors. Is you gave a lot of gold there. I think people should definitely take note of that. Is firstly, communication is key for any successful relationship,
Mhm.
right? And you
Yeah.
hear it all the time. You're right. You hear those horror stories where real estate investors and contractors just end up clashing, and I think it just boils
Mhm.
down to effective communication. And if you can be as
Yeah.
detailed as possible, itemize it all, and you're absolutely right, there can be a big variation in the scope. And if your communication is not there, you think in one thing, the contractors think in one thing, they give
Mhm.
you sort of a bit on what it's going to cost, and either the end result doesn't come out to what you wanted, or along the way you end up being like, no, that's not, and then they're like, oh, but it's going to cost this much more, and you're like, what's going on? And like, even just like you said with tiling, it can really cost you, depending on the tile, depending on the pattern, and the layout is also going to depend on the amount of labor and effort that actually goes um, into tiling, or putting up a backsplash or anything like that. So there's
Mhm.
the more detailed you can be. I love that. The more detailed you can be, the better it's going to work out for you, because you could have a few contractors and you can find that there's this huge spectrum of the renovation cost, and you're like, wait, what do I
Mhm.
budget for this? Do I go with the high end,
Yeah.
or do I go with the lowest? What do I go in the middle? But yeah, if you can be more
Yeah.
detailed, I'm sure you can narrow that range down and give you a little bit more of an accurate number on what it's going to look like, and it will just be less headaches going forward. So if you can start that off on a good foot, and yeah, be as detailed as you can. And I love that advice. Put that clause in there. Give yourself some time so that
Mhm.
you can get enough bids, so that you can feel confident knowing that, hey, I have a good idea on what this is going to cost, and does it make sense running the numbers? Is this worth putting my money in, putting the time and effort in? So I
Mhm.
absolutely love that, man. Now, when it comes to renovating, what are the most important things to fix when flipping a house, so that you're not over renovating and not getting that money back, or under
Mhm.
renovating and you're not able to sell the property for what you thought you could?
Yeah, it's a bit of a fine line, right? Because everyone wants to save a buck, but if you start skimping, it's gonna hurt your after repair value, and it's gonna stand out like a sore thumb. I've seen people try to save fixtures, and it might not be an eyesore when you initially walk in. You think, oh, I can save that. I can reuse it or repurpose it. But once everything's new and fresh, it's gonna stand out like a sore thumb. So I'm really hesitant on trying to skimp out. It's one of those things where it's got to look new and fresh. On the flip side, too, as you had mentioned, you don't want to overbuild and overspend. You don't need to start doing custom fixtures and ordering special lights, and you don't have to go nuts. So I like to just appeal to the masses. I do pretty standard finishes, typical white subway tile, quartz countertops, vinyl plank flooring, we keep it fairly standard. And then we do like to, I wouldn't say splurge, but I'm always thinking about after repair value and am I going to get this money back? So like in that flip that we just completed there, we did the toe kick lighting in the under cabinet, and it's great, right? And for the cost of that, it's minimal, and it'll set you apart from the competition, right? If there's a few flips in the neighborhood, you want to stand out. So yeah, it's just adding value, bang for your buck. So if there's things you can do that are fairly inexpensive in the grand scheme of things, and you're going to see that return on your investment, then it's well worth it.
Yeah, I love that. Those inexpensive things that set you apart could be what actually gets you to sell the home a lot quicker, so that it's not sitting on the
Mm-hmm.
market, so that you don't have that extra holding cost. I love that. And when people focus their renovations, or where they put in most of the renovations when it comes to a flip, I take it,
Mm-hmm.
uh, kitchen, bathrooms, those would be the high ROI places to look at, right?
Absolutely.
I know the last time we spoke, you mentioned you gave a great tip on what you do when it comes to planning out your flip and where things are going with regards to spray painting. Do you want to touch on that? I feel like we can't leave that out.
Yeah.
That was an awesome tip that I'm never gonna forget. So
Thanks.
please
Thank
touch on
you.
that.
Yeah.
Here's a quick tip for you listeners out there. As a real estate investor, there's two things that you can focus on that will bring everything else together. The first thing is networking. Go out there and network with other like minded investors. Look in your area, see what networking events there are, and go and join them. If you're within the Edmonton area, by all means, find my contact info below. I'll hook you up with local events, and you can make sure that you go and attend as many as possible, grow your network, grow your net worth. The second thing I'd say is your power team. You'll come to leverage them quite often. You rely on them to make investing easier for you. They have the expertise that you don't need to have. So I'd make sure that I focus on building a strong power team. If you are in the Edmonton region, you're looking for an investor focused realtor, by all means hit me up. I am licensed. I do have an investor list as well that I just send deals out to investors on my list. So if you are interested in being added to that as well, you can contact me below. I'll make sure to add you. Let's get back to it.
Yeah, yeah. So you can't be on site all the time. You got different trades coming in and out, and there's times I'm running 4 or 5 jobs at a time. So what I like to do is, and tradespeople are funny too, because it's some of them they won't pick up the phone and call. They'll just assume, right? So yeah, what I like to do is I take spray paint and I do periodic walkthroughs of the property when I'm there. So like let's say you got your basement stripped down to the foundation walls. I'll go mark what windows are going where. So this is going to be a hopper. This is going to be a slider. This is a picture window. What I do is I'll mark out all the cabinets. So that way, when the electrician's in, he knows where to run his feeds for the dishwasher and the fridge and the stove. The HVAC guy knows where to run the venting for the hood fan. Just everyone's on the same page. It's just so much cleaner. Even before my electrician goes in for his roughing, I'll mark the swing of the doors, right? So he knows where to mount the box for his switch and it's not behind the door. And then even before drywall, I'll go in and on the ceiling we'll have rough-ins for our pot lights and smoke detectors and all that jazz. And I'll mark it on the floor with my spray paint. And that way, if anything gets missed, I can look at the floor and know where the pot light is or where the return air is. So it's just being proactive instead of reactive, right? Because it just takes one buried pot light, and you're like, okay, how can we avoid this in the future, right?
Yeah, exactly. I love that tip. That one's gonna stay with me. I'm not gonna let that one go to waste though. So, we've spoken about like the renovation side of things, and not over renovating, um,
Mm-hmm.
and not under renovating either, because you could sort of see the quality when you go put the house up to market. But now people
Mm-hmm.
looking to actually try and maximize their profits when flipping a house, where should you be trying to save? Where should you be trying to maximize that return? How do you go about doing this? Is it like trying to find deals and specials with regards to your appliances and your materials? How do you go about trying to get the most out of your flips?
Yeah, good question. I think another thing I look for is basements can be a large expense. If you go into an older home and the basement's unfinished, well, now you got to spend money on insulation, your lumber for your frost walls, drywall, taping, texture. So, um, if you find a house where the basement's finished, even if it's outdated, as long as the layout works, and all you have to do is replace flooring, light fixtures, doors, baseboard, casing, and paint. That's a huge cost saver. And these older houses, you're not going to pay that much more for a finished basement that's severely outdated. So that's one tip I would have. Another one is, as far as the exterior goes, if you can get away with just maybe you do siding on the front of the house, you can just paint the stucco on the sides and the back. That's a big saver. Your ROI isn't high on exterior work typically. On the flip side, though, if it looks like a dog's breakfast on the exterior and you just leave it as is, that's gonna hurt you. So again, it's finding that sweet spot, that middle ground, where you're making it look presentable, making it look good, but still making sure you're getting a return on your investment and not just frivolously throwing money out the window.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. Great advice initially with buying the home. I mean, I guess it stands true. You know, you make your money on the buy. So if you
Mm-hmm.
can find a home that's already got that basement that's finished, that will save you. I
Mm-hmm.
love that advice. And then
Mm-hmm.
with regards to the exterior, I love that too. Absolutely right. If you can, sort out the curb appeal, and then paint the
Mm-hmm.
sides, great. And I think always refer back to the comps so that you know the level of renovations that you need to be doing, right? So that you're not over renovating the exterior, because like you say, the ROI on that typically isn't really there. And like from what I've seen with a lot of investors is sometimes they don't even touch the outside. You know what I mean?
True.
So yeah. And you're absolutely right. If it looks like dog's breakfast, there are people even going to consider going inside. Are they going to consider giving it
Mm-hmm.
a real look, or are they going to look at the outside and already know like, this probably isn't for me? So I love that advice.
Mm-hmm.
New investors may think, hey, I have to go put siding right around the whole house. And yeah, if you paint the sides, paint the back, make the front look presentable, I think it gives you
Mm-hmm.
the same effect, right? And saves you on the cost. Um, all great tips to maximize your profit there. Another thing that sort of eats away into your profit is your turnover time, right? Do you have any advice for people keeping their turnover time as short as possible from, that possession date to sold?
Yeah, here again, if you're hiring a contractor, you're relying on them, right? And they've got a lot of leverage in that. So it's, again, whereas turnkey, you know what you got, you don't have the holding cost. So it's risk versus reward. For myself, contracting the jobs out myself, it's almost like a game of chess. You're always trying to stay two steps ahead. So it's just a matter of organizing, being proactive, pre-ordering things. Windows are a big one. That's the first thing I do. Even I try to get in there once conditions are removed and the house is sold. We'll have a due diligence condition, where we can go to the home and measure up windows and get them ordered before we even have the keys. Permits are another one. If you're doing a legal suite, you need a development permit from the city. They're better now, but in spring, summer, I mean, it was crazy. It was like 2.5 months just for your development permit. So when we were doing legal suites, we would just put on there in the terms that we can apply for permits prior to receiving the keys, prior to having possession. So then that way I can get my draftsman in there. We can do the plans. I can apply for all the permits with the city for my development permit, and then that way it just increases, reduces your holding costs and your turnaround time. So yeah, just little tricks like that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I think all of that boils down to being proactive. So,
Mm-hmm.
if new investors listening to this could sort of just take down all of those notes, they have a list of things that they can get working on before they even get possession, before, everything happens, and not just wait until they get the keys and like, okay, let's get started. There's a lot of steps that they can take beforehand. Because not only does the holding cost eat away into your profit, but if the market doesn't shift in the right direction, that also eats away into your profit. So if you can keep that
Yeah.
turnover time short, that absolutely helps you. Um, Now, how do you go about evaluating whether a house would make for a good fix and flip? Uh, are you narrowing down neighborhoods, and you seasoned at this already, right? So for new
Mm-hmm.
investors, what advice do you have? Should they be narrowing down on specific neighborhoods? Obviously, I guess speaking to the realtor would be a must. Get in
Mm-hmm.
those neighborhoods and then sort of get in the ideal property criteria that they would be looking for, and just narrow down on that and specifically look at homes that meet that criteria? Or should they just be looking around and looking at different sizes, different types, different neighborhoods, and trying to get
Mm.
comps on all different types of properties from different neighborhoods to try and make sense to see if it works as a fix and flip? What advice do you have on evaluating that?
So yeah, that's I guess you don't want to cast too wide of a net, right? You don't want to close off any opportunities, but I would say stay away from those really bad neighborhoods regardless, right? I always recommend to people, for those who know the Edmonton area, between Yellowhead and about 132 Ave, I typically recommend stay out of there. A lot of people do legal suites in there. Um, as you go further north, 132 to 137 Ave is good. 137 Ave to 144 Ave is better. And as you go further north, you're getting newer homes. It depends on your strategy, right? You almost got to work backwards. What's your goal? It's like, are you doing a flip? Because if you're doing a flip, we're going to be in certain areas. Are you doing a suite and it's going to be a long term buy and hold? Well, now we got to look at different neighborhoods. Do you want a turnkey rental in a newer home? Well, now we're in a different area. So I think you got to start with strategy first and foremost, and then from there you can have your target neighborhoods. What you can do is talk to your realtor, whether it's myself or somebody else. Make sure they're investor focused realtor, and you get set up on Paragon. And even if you're not going to pull the trigger and buy something for a few months, at least you'll get a sense of the market, the value, and what's a deal and what isn't. And you can kind of almost train yourself, right? Like, remember last time we were speaking about you asked how do you get a sense of deal evaluation, and for a new investor, how do you kind of climatize yourself with that? And we were like, well, just get set up on Paragon, and you can start doing case studies and running numbers and just pretending. Um, and then, have your realtor obviously send you comps is huge. And you don't want to shoot for the moon. And one thing about comps too, you want to make sure they're fairly recent. I go back 6 months, because if you're going back 12 months, it's not going to be realistic. If you're looking at houses that were sold for 20-30K over list price in February or March of 2022, that's not going to be applicable to today's market. So ensure that you're getting recent comps as well is highly important.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Perfect answer. I completely love that. I tell people that on my investor list as well, is there's a few people that's like, hey, I'm not ready to buy anything yet, but I'm like, absolutely, that's okay. I think that's
100%.
the best time to get into it, is before you're ready to buy, so that you
Mhm.
can have those deals coming your way, and you can evaluate them, you can run the numbers, so that you can get your reps in, because that's what gives you confidence to pull the trigger, right? Is getting those reps in.
Mhm.
You won't know what a good deal looks like if you haven't run the numbers multiple times. So it's running the numbers, getting comfortable with that. So when you run the numbers and you're like, hey, I've done everything right, at least everything that I've done over and over and over, but things just look really good on this. Am I missing something?
Mhm. Yeah.
Or is this a good deal, but you won't be able to know. Like, if the first deal that you evaluate is a great deal, you're not going to know. You're not going to have any benchmark to compare it to, right? So absolutely, I think that is
Exactly.
critical, is getting the deals coming your way before you're ready. And you're right, begin with the end in mind. I love that advice. Begin with the end in mind, because that's how you get to the end goal, right? If you don't know what the end goal is, you're just gonna move in all sorts of directions, and you're just gonna go with the current. So if you can begin with the end in mind, you could sort of cut out a lot of the fluff and know what to focus on, because it becomes very overwhelming as a newer investor. All the different strategies, all the different opportunities that are presented your way. You don't know what to take action on. So if you can get clear on that end goal is, at least initially, for the initial strategy that you're trying to pursue, you can get the leads coming your way for that. You can run the numbers. I love that. It's perfect advice. Run the numbers, get comfortable at it, and when you're ready, you'll be able to pull the trigger on that. So great, great, great advice. Now people are looking to take it a step further, and like, okay, I'm running the numbers now, Dustin, but how do I know
Mhm.
what a good deal looks like for a flip? What ROI are you specifically looking for on your flips?
Yeah. I always look for a 50K spread. So after all my costs, and that's all costs. So make sure you're running the numbers for everything: your property taxes, utilities, private lender money, your buy-in, your reno, everything. I like to see a 50K spread. That's and if you're in a market where you keep losing out on properties, don't get discouraged. Don't start bending your numbers. You got to stick to that. Be firm in your numbers. And yeah, for me, it's a 50K spread is always my goal when I rate on a place.
I like that. I like that. Now, some of the biggest problems that new investors have is, like we said, analyzing the deals and understanding how an investor thinks. Would you mind if we
Hmm.
run through more of the specifics on one of your deals?
Sure. Yeah, you bet.
Okay, perfect. Well, what kind of property is it and where is it located?
Yeah, so it was in Leduc. It was in an area called South Park.
Okay.
And what had happened was it was crazy. So we went and looked at this house. This was a couple years ago, and main floor looked good. It was outdated, but we're like, why is this house so cheap? Right? They're asking 220K, and it was an 1,100 square foot 1970s bungalow. Bedrooms were a good size. Had a two-piece ensuite. Like it looked great. We're like, what is going on here? So we go into the basement, and that's where the disaster was. The concrete floor had actually heaved. There's a bunch of water, and the hydrostatic pressure of that water. I don't know what it is with Leduc, but it, yeah, pushed up on the concrete slab, pushed up on the telepost pads, pushed the telepost and the beam up, so the hall on the main floor had like a crown. It was crazy, and I'm like, this is insane, right? And most people probably would have ran away, but I just saw dollar signs, and I'm like, there's an opportunity here. Like defects are a funny thing, right? Because if there's a latent defect that you weren't aware of, you can be in trouble, right? Whereas I'm like, hey, if there's a visible defect, like a horizontal crack that's gonna scare a lot of people, and I can get an engineered wall built for a few $1,000, you know what I mean? You can buy that stuff at a huge discount. So this place, we ended up getting it for 190,000. It's a lot of work. We had to jackhammer the whole basement floor. We ran interior weeping tile around the perimeter of the basement along the footing. And then we did laterals, backfilled with wash rock, put in a sump barrel. Like, it was crazy. And then we had to slowly drop the teleposts and fix the joists right on the main floor. It was crazy. But yeah, we ended up making 90K on that job. It sold for, I think it was just under 440. It sold for like, I forget, 438 or whatever it was. But yeah, it was a great job. It was awesome. One thing about Leduc too, just for your listeners, if anyone's investing out there and they want to do a legal suite, there's a flight path. Don't ask me. I don't know the rhyme or reason. It's just crazy government municipality rules. But there's a diagonal line on this map. They call it the flight path. And if you're on one side of it, you can do a legal suite. And if you're on the other side of it, you can't. So just make sure before you close on a property, you check with Leduc and make sure you can do a suite there if that's your intentions, and have your realtor reach out to them or do it yourself, whichever. But yeah, just a little tidbit for people out there, because last thing you want to do is buy a house with the intentions of buying a legal suite and find out after the fact it can't be done. So.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. And I mean, whether it's Leduc or not, whether you in a completely different area, I think that's just great advice all around is make sure that,
Mm-hmm.
you can do with the property what you intend to do with the property before you go into it. But I love this one because where most people would be scared and shy away from this property, that's where an investor goes in and like, huh, this looks and smells like money. This,
Yeah.
because that's what an investor
Right.
does, is
Mm-hmm.
they're there to solve problems, right? um
Mm-hmm.
so for someone else, this is a problem. For an investor, this is like, hey, this is an opportunity for me to fix this problem and get compensated for fixing this problem. Now, you on the one hand, you have all that construction experience and knowledge. I think you were
Mm-hmm.
completely comfortable going in and taking on this scope of a project. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I yeah, I think some investors may look at that and be like, no, 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 that's
Not
I'm
for
not
me.
I'm not comfortable with that. No.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Right? Everybody's different.
But I think as you gain experience, the scope of the project that you're willing to take on just increases, because you're not, now you're comfortable with doing the basic renovation, so you're willing to push it a little further, and you realize doing enough due diligence, getting enough quotes in there, and I mean, as long as I have contingencies for any problems that I can't see, I should be
Mm-hmm.
somewhat okay. You know, I have the experience about this, so all my other numbers should be somewhat accurate. So just have a contingency for those unforeseen things, and I'm willing to take this on. Let's see how it goes. Um, Tell me, how did you find this deal?
I was on MLS, just on
Really?
Realtor.ca. Yep. Yeah. Yep.
Wow. And can you run us through the numbers? I know you said, I think you said you made, was it 90 on this one?
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. So we bought for 190. We bought it for the lady who was on title. She was out of Calgary. So my assumption is that this was a rental property, and she probably just had enough and just wanted it gone. The reno, holding costs, realtor fees, all that was about 130, I believe. Yeah, it was a great project. It was so it was a drive. Right at that time, I was living out on an acreage past Gibbons, so there to Leduc was just a crazy hike. But I was like, you know what? I'll go anywhere if I'm getting paid for it. Why not, right?
Yeah, why not? I mean, that's a great spread, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, that's a great spread. I know a lot of investors like if it's diagonal or vertical crack in the basement,
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. As soon as it starts becoming horizontal, they start thinking twice, you know. Unless they
Correct.
experience,
Yeah.
of
Then
course, and they're like, "Hey, I can take this on." But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's it, right? Horizontal cracks are typically structural. It's just
Yeah.
that the earth is pushing on the foundation and it's, deflecting in the middle. So, that point you call an engineering all fit. This another thing too. If you have a home or you're considering offering on a home that has some latent defects like a horizontal crack, again, have your realtor put in a due diligence condition on the terms. Make sure obviously it's prior to removing conditions abide by that due diligence term, and bring in a company, an engineering company like BIE Engineering or somebody, and they can do it's going to cost you probably 700-800 bucks, but it's better than getting into this property and spending a heck of a lot more money than you had anticipated. So you can get BIE Engineering in there or whoever else, have them do up a drawing. You can get a contractor in there, and then you can have them price out doing an engineered wall for you. And you might actually be surprised at how little the cost is compared to what you're going to see on return when you sell it, right? Because a lot of people, your mind kind of goes to the worst case scenario, and there are some things that they don't cost as much to fix and repair as one may think. So it's just a matter of doing your due diligence, getting the right people in there to advise you accordingly.
Absolutely. I think that's a key thing that investors leverage is other people's knowledge and expertise, right? You don't need
Mm-hmm.
to know it all. You don't need to know everything when it comes to investing. You have the power team, and then it extends beyond that. It's a leveraging people's knowledge and expertise. So yeah, if you can get someone to give you a quote on this, and you know that you can make it work within your numbers, while other people are shying away from this deal, it may work out to be an amazing deal for you, like it did in this case.
Yeah,
Now, with regards to this
that's
whole
for sure.
process, were there any challenges, and if so, how were you able to overcome them?
Ooh, the drive was a challenge. No, just the scope of work. It was big. I'd say that one was probably the largest scope of work I had done. I've done some pretty big renos. We did one in Mayfield. This wasn't a flip; it was for a client a few years back, and it was a massive undertaking. So that one's probably right up there. This guy went crazy. I think he had it's like 120 pot lights in this little 1,200 square foot bungalow place, was lit up like a Christmas tree. But yeah, just the scope of work. Is a pretty big job. But yeah, it's nothing we couldn't handle. The nice thing was there's a Lafarge plant in Nisku, like 5 minutes away. So all that concrete, that was my main concern. Like, where are we going to put all this old concrete? So we just chucked it out the window, and then another guy would bring it to the dump trailer, and then once the trailer was full, we'd ship it over to Lafarge and drop it off there. They'll take clean concrete as long as there's no mesh or rebar in it. So that took care of that. And then once the concrete floor was broken up, dig some trenches, throw in some weeping tile, put in a sump pit, and from there we're just pouring a new floor, and boom, now we're back to the start, and now we're just doing a basement development essentially, so our legal suite development. So it's it's kind of funny if you look at the whole scope. It can be daunting and overwhelming, and you're like, where do I begin? But if you kind of break it down in little increments, like anything, then it doesn't seem so overwhelming. You don't feel like you're drinking water out of a fire hose. It's just like us, right? We got this end goal, we got time on our side, we're trying to get there. But if you break it down in increments, it's like the runs of a ladder, right? One step at a time, and you'll get there. It's like they asked Terry Fox when he was running his marathons. He said, "Well, how did you run a marathon every day?" And he said, "Well, I didn't run a marathon. I just look at the next pole and I'd run there. And once I got there, I'd go to the next one." So it's just breaking it up into incremental steps for long term gain is the name of the game.
Absolutely, absolutely. I live by that. I love that. Is if you look at the end goal, it seems so daunting, and I think that's what stops a lot of people from taking action. Right? Is I don't know what
Yeah,
to do
absolutely.
to get from the beginning to the end. But you
Yeah.
don't need to know exactly what to do. All you need to know is that next step. That's all you need to focus on. Right now, you do begin with the end in mind, and you get that strategy, but you don't need to focus on all the steps at once. Right? It's taking it one
hmm
step at a time. um I even treat my workouts like that, a leg day, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh man, I don't want to do this, and I'm like, let's just look, okay, what's the next set, what's the next exercise,
hmm
and then before you know it, you're done, and you're like, wow, I finished this, it's not that bad. But looking
Yeah.
at it
Yeah.
from the beginning, if you always just focus it on the end goal, it seems too much to handle, and it's not the case. It's not the case. It's just
That's
perspective
it.
is focusing on the next step.
Exactly. Yeah. And then it becomes habit after a while, and then it's second nature, right? Like you go into the
Exactly.
gym, right? At first you start and you're like, oh, I have to get up early and do this. And then after a while, it's just part of your daily routine, and it's no different than waking up in the morning and brushing your teeth. It just, you don't even think about it. So
Exactly. Exactly. Now, looking back on this deal, is there anything that you would have done differently?
I don't think so. No, no, I don't think there's a whole lot different.
How did the negotiation go from like list price to what you ended up paying for it?
Yeah, so they countered once. It's it's like a game of poker, right?
Yeah.
So we started at, I believe it was 185. It was a while ago. I think they came back at, like, was it 2 or 205? And then anyway, we didn't bite, and we said 190, and they took it. So yeah, ended up getting it 30K under list, and yeah, it worked out great. Leduc's a good area too. I mean, when you're buying in at that kind of a price, I mean, we could have done a regular flip too, probably, but we're like, let's do the suite, and then we got a plan B in mind if we need it. Luckily, we didn't need it, and it was a out of town investor who bought it and ended up renting it out up and down. So she's happy, we're happy. Everybody wins at the end of the day. Everybody gets what they want. So
Absolutely. And I find that that's a reoccurring theme with a lot of investors is creating that win-win-win, situation. You don't necessarily have to be taking advantage of other people. The lady selling the home, she didn't want to go
hmm
through all of the effort and time and cost to fix the home, bring it back up to scratch,
hmm
and then sell it, right? So
yeah,
you relieving her of that, right? So it's a win for her. She's got this off her hands. For you, you're willing to put in that effort, you're willing to take it back to what it should be, or renovate it, take something that's in terrible condition and
hmm
fix it up again, and you compensated for that, win for you. And then another investor
hmm
that doesn't want to come in and have to renovate a property, they just want to buy a property, set it, and sort of forget it, kind of thing, build up that
exactly.
that pay down, build up that appreciation over time. That's what they focused on, right? And that's a win for them. So that's what I love about real estate is you don't have to be ripping people off to win in this game. You know what I mean? You can be helping
Exactly.
people out, um, and at the same time be fairly compensated for it. So I love that about real estate investing.
Yeah,
Now
it is.
tell
It's
me,
great.
yeah, now tell me, Dustin, when you're not investing,
hmm
how else are you spending your time? I know you have a company on the side as well. Um,
Yep.
I mean, if you want to touch on that, you licensed as a realtor. Um, yeah, how are you spending your time outside the investing realm?
Yeah, so yeah, outside of work, I got three daughters, so and they're 3, 5, and 12. So the two little ones, lots of swimming, tobogganing. Play drums when I can. Doesn't happen very often. They're in the garage, and unless the house is empty, I'm not banging away. So yeah, just hanging out with the family. Go for dinner with the wife once in a while, and yeah, read books.
I take it those drums are traditional drums. They're not like these new age drums that you could sort of plug in and it's all silent and you can listen to it on your headphones kind of thing, right?
Yeah, they're not electronic drums. Although in
No.
hindsight, I probably should have. And I could keep them in the basement, right? But yeah,
Right.
I'm actually thinking about it. Maybe next year I'll get an electronic kit, and then I can keep it in the basement. But yeah, they're
Exactly.
acoustic drums. Yeah.
Okay. Ah, awesome, man. Well, I as always, every time we speak, I got value from this, and I have zero doubts out there that people listening didn't at least, even if they experienced, didn't at least just get one piece of valuable information that they can implement in their investing journey. So I want to thank you so much for coming on, Dustin. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for passing on your knowledge to other investors out there. Thanks for giving back, man. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Hey, I appreciate it as well. Thank you for doing this and having a platform. What's great is listening to your podcast is we can relate because it's all Edmonton and area, right? When I'm listening to a podcast in Ontario, I have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to neighborhoods. So it's great that you're doing this and sharing knowledge and helping people out. So thanks for having me, and yeah, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. One thing I will do is I'll be sure to leave your information down in the description. If anyone's listened and they're like, hey, Dustin, I like that guy. I want to hear more from that guy. Maybe I want to reach out to him as a realtor. Maybe I want to joint venture with him, whatever it is. Maybe I just want to follow along his journey. He seems really interesting.
Mhm.
Look down in the description. I'll leave Dustin's information down there. Thank you for tuning in to Building Wealth Through Real Estate. If you're interested in learning more about short-term rental properties like Airbnbs, then you definitely want to check out the episode where I interview Carlos Yana Lunas. This is your host, Al Noble, signing off.